Let me get the recording going. Perfect. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the course. Just a real quick Zoom etiquette thing. I mean, I think everyone's already doing it, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. So you all should have the ability to unmute yourself. Feel free to do so at any point. Just leave yourself muted until you have something to say. You know, we don't want feedback and all and that sort of thing. But yeah, my hope is that at least as much as possible anyway, for as long as we're doing this remote thing, we'll try to treat it as much as we can like a normal course. So feel free, raise a hand, ask something in the chat, unmute yourself, ask a question. Usually you're not going to be interrupting anything. You know, I mean, that's the sort of the goal. The advantage of doing it this synchronous way is that people can actually interact, talk, ask things. Yeah, rather than just having me, you know, blab on. I know these online classes and the remote stuff can be challenging. A challenging time in general, and the remote stuff can be challenging in general. So my goal is going to be to keep these remote sessions as short as I can. We probably won't use the full time, and we'll try to mainly use the time that we have to do sort of stuff, to do group activities together, interacting with things, not just listening to me talk, because that's boring. And it's, you know, it's maybe fine if we're face to face or whatever, we can talk to one another, but there's limitations to doing this online and all that. So try to do the best with it we can at least. And I'll try to keep these as minimal as possible. So my name is Dr. Paul Dorado. Feel free to address me however you'd like. Paul, Dr. Dorado, professor, whatever, fine with it. I'm gonna be the instructor for the course this semester. You all probably know by this point, but CSU is a little bit up in the air in terms of precisely what the semester is going to look like. There's still some questions. For at least the first 2 weeks, our class is going to be remote. I've been told that starting on the third week, they'll update me about whether or not that will continue to be the case. But at some point in the semester, hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to switch to a hybrid format. For most of the rest of the semester until spring break. And then after spring break, everything is going to switch to remote again. So basically we'll do sort of remote instruction beginning and end. Middle will be a sort of hybrid structure. When we're doing remote, we'll use both of the days, so Tuesday and Thursday. I'm going to try and keep them, like I said, short. So we're not here too long, but try to have some good activities that we can do sort of both days. And then when we're doing hybrid stuff, I'm going to break you into groups of, into 2 groups. And each group will come in 1 day a week because of COVID-related classroom size restrictions. So once we go hybrid, you'll be coming in 1 day, and then we'll use all that 75 minutes to try to do what we normally would have done a little bit spread out. So anyone have any questions just about that to start with? Again, feel free to mute yourself. You can ask questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand or whatever using the Zoom functionality. So any questions so far? All right. So let's talk a little bit about how the course is going to be structured briefly, and then we'll actually just do a little bit of logic, do some fun stuff. But so the way the course is going to work, you're basically going to have 3 kinds of grades in it. I'm going to post, so starting next week, certain videos that'll be in lieu of me lecturing, because again, it's weird to do all that, this online stuff. So these videos will be sort of short, 10 to 15 minutes per video. And the sort of incentive that I give you to watch these videos is after you the video, there'll be quizzes that are due before class sessions. And you can take these quizzes as many times as you want. And Canvas will tell you how you've done after each time you take it. So what does that mean? You should all get 100% of these quizzes, right? You can go back. If you get a question wrong, you can go back, watch the video again, maybe figure out what you got wrong, right? The goal of these quizzes really give you free points, first of all, and also just to make sure you have a basic idea of some content before we come to class so we can use the class sessions productively. And those quizzes are going to be worth 10% of the total grade. There'll be basically 1 quiz per video that I post. And the quizzes will all be done through Canvas. So that'll be how you'll have access to everything. There'll also be the sort of in-class stuff that we do while we're working remotely. So for at least these first 2 weeks, these in-class activities are going to be group work. So that you can sort of discuss, go over problems with one another. I've had a lot of success with doing that in the past because, you know, I can teach you all logic and that's useful, but you all teaching each other logic is even more useful. That works even better. So another advantage, I'm going to have these groups be sort of permanent groups that you'll have throughout the entire semester. So I'll still get to know a few people. You'll actually talk to some people, get some names, get some faces. Those group activities were, again, once you do them as a group, we'll go over them collectively. So again, before you turn them in, you should have all the right answers. You should be getting 100% on them. They'll be turned in through Canvas again. And again, the hope is everyone should be getting 100%. I'm going to need every single person to turn in a version of it. So you'll work on it together and then turn in an individual copy, just in terms of how Canvas grades things. That's how I have to do it. Once we switch to the hybrid structure, because we can't really do the same group stuff, the classes are too spread out and we're wearing masks, you'd have to be screaming across the room at one another. What we'll do instead of that is basically we'll just collectively as a class go through the problems together. So same thing, you should have all the answers before you turn it in. Those assignments will be due by the end of the day that we had the class session. So if anyone's going to be using the asynchronous option, you can't take the class remote face-to-face for whatever reason, you can use that time. You can use the recordings of the class sessions to, again, fill out those, just get them to me by the end of the day on Canvas. Again, that's going to be 20% of your total grade in the course. And then the last grade for the class is going to be the exams. That'll be the big thing. That'll be most of your grade in the class. 70% of your grade cumulatively for all the various exams in the course. They'll be relatively short. Exam is actually perhaps overstating it a little bit. My guess is they should take on average something like 30 to 35 minutes. It'll be a little different for exam. We'll do one more or less every 2 weeks. That'll vary a little bit. But basically every chapter or 2 chapters in the book, there'll be one of these sort of short exams. That's where most of the grade in the course is going to be. Good news, they're going to be open note, open book, use whatever resources you want. You're going to take them online on Canvas. So rather than making sure you're not using your notes, I'm just going to let you use your notes, right? That's fine. The downside of that, however, so there's the penalty, so to speak. The exams are going to be challenging. So you're going to need to know what you're doing before you go in. And there's also going to be a time limit. So you need to know what you're doing before you go in, right? So you still need to prepare for them, study for them, get ready to go. In general, I'm going to give you a minute per question on the exam, per minute per point. So, you'll need to be able to work quickly, know the stuff, know the material, but you don't really have to worry about forgetting anything. If you forget a term, if you forget what the ad hominem fallacy is, you can use your notes, look that up, that's fine. You just need to know what to do with that information once you have it. And that's pretty much it for the class structure. The exams will be most of your grade. They'll be more challenging than I perhaps otherwise might make them. But the way the course is set up is that if you do all of the quizzes, do all of the in-class stuff, since you should be getting 100% and all that things, if you can get an 85% on the exams, you will get an A in the class. That's the way that it's structured. So the exams will be challenging, but you should have good resources to do them. I'm going to give you homework problems. I'm not going to grade them. Think this would just take too long. I wouldn't be able to get feedback back to you quickly enough. But I'm going to give you the answer sheets to the homework assignments. Think of it as a way of studying for the exams, making sure you're on the right page with the material before you go into the exam. The homework problems will look exactly like the exam problems will look. And also, I'll have office hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so the days we don't meet. From 10 to 11, we'll do them via Zoom in the same sort of format. Please come in, take advantage of those times. If you're struggling with any of the material or you're not sure about anything prior to the exam, it can be a wonderful chance for us to go over stuff together, answer any questions you might have. All right, so that's the class format, class structure. Anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Let me switch the view and make sure I'm seeing everyone. Yeah, good. All right, excellent. So just a reminder, the way it's going to work is that everything is going to be recorded. So if you do, for whatever reason, have to miss a class session, say you have symptoms of COVID-19, okay, stay, don't come to class when we're meeting face-to-face, stay home, right? But what I'm going to do, even when we're meeting, doing the hybrid stuff and we're meeting face-to-face, there'll be Echo 360 recordings of all of the class sessions that you can go access. And so that you can sort of stay up with things. You can even use those if you do come to the class sessions, you want to go back, review something again for the exam, homework question, anything like that. So use all of these resources, use me as a resource. Weird semester, again, I mean, I don't even know if it's weird anymore. The new normal for the semester, strange semester. So use me as a resource. If there's any questions you got about how to deal with anything, please let me know. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I'm here to teach. I'm not here to do all the other stuff I have to do as part of my CSU career. I do those other things so that I can teach. So you're not going to be bothering me. Let me know what you need. Let me know what would be helpful. And I'm here for you. So that's my little spiel. Any other? So I want to actually turn doing interesting things next, actually talking about what the class is going to be about for a few minutes. But does anyone have any sort of thoughts, questions, comments about anything we've talked about so far? I could read over the syllabus, make sure you don't have any questions from that. That's all the same material will be there. There will be for on Thursday, we'll do our first sort of like group activity. I'm not even going to grade it or anything, but it'll be a good chance for us to go over some stuff together. So there'll be a short little reading for us to do there. Let's actually start talking about what the class is going to be about now. Do some fun stuff. So get rid of the dull things. You got out of all the classroom business. What's the class actually going to be about? All right. Here's the easiest way I can think of to explain what logic and critical thinking is about. So, okay, is it ever the case for any of you, and you don't have to actually raise your hands or anything, but think for yourself, sometimes does the world not make sense? Sometimes do other people seem as if they don't make any sense? Or actually, other people are even weirder, right? Does it ever sometimes seem to you like someone will say something and you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. And then 5 minutes later, you'll be like, wait, did that make sense? Right? Or maybe the other way around. Maybe at first you're like, oh, that person didn't know what they're talking about. And then at night, you're like, while you're going to bed, you're like, wait a second, was that a good point? Okay. Is it ever the case that sometimes you don't make sense to yourself? You yourself aren't sure if the things you're saying, thinking, believing, are they making sense? Are they right? Right. Well, my guess is, if you're anything like me, your answer to those questions is yes. Yes, all of them, right? Sometimes the world does not make as much sense as we might like to think. And again, crazy times that we're all living in, maybe now more than ever, but indeed, yeah, just in general, things so frequently don't make as much sense as we would want them to make. Right. What is logic and critical thinking? It's a set of tools that we're going to develop to help the world make more sense. So how? What are we going to get from this? We're going to get ways of thinking about things that are likely to let us make sense of the world better. We're going to get tools that we can use to figure out when the people we're talking to are making sense and when they're not making sense. Right? When what they're saying doesn't work, doesn't follow, and figuring out when what people are saying things that does work, that do follow. And then lastly, I'm going to give you some tools, resources that you can use to be clear in your own thinking, right? To think more clearly about things, to reach conclusions that you yourself feel more confident about. So that's pretty cool if I can pull it off, right? I mean, I'm making big promises here. First day of class, right? Big promises. But if I can pull it off, that would be pretty cool, actually, right? It'll be really valuable. And logic's very different than a lot of other classes. I've seen a few of you have taken philosophy classes before, just from looking at things. Many of you haven't, that's fine. I'm not presupposing that you've taken philosophy before. But logic classes are very different even than other philosophy classes you might have taken. And what's weird about logic is we're not going to talk about any particular topic, right? This is really different than every other class you're probably going to take in your CSU career. You take a math class, what are you going to be talking about? Math. Take an economics class, what are you going to be talking about? Economics, right? Even you take most philosophy classes, you take an ethics class, what are you going to be talking about? Ethics, right? What's weird about logic and critical thinking is we're not going to be talking about any one topic, really, because the tools we're going to be developing are going to help you think well about any topic. And so as a result, we're going to use examples from all over the place. I'll be using examples from natural science. Maybe if I'm feeling suicidal, we'll do some political examples, right? But also maybe we're going to talk about Taylor Swift albums or like restaurants, right? I mean, because all of those are areas that you can think about. And what we're going to get are tools that you can use to think better about whatever it is that you're thinking about. So again, big promises. The hope is that by the end of this semester, you're going to get tools that you can use in whatever other class you're taking at CSU and get things out of it. You'll be able to apply the things you've learned here, any other class you go on to take, whatever your major is, whatever you're doing in the course of your life. Okay, so those are some big promises. What are we going to assume? Our assumption for this semester is going to be that all of us, every single human being in the world, takes themselves to be rational. That's my assumption. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So what I mean by rational is I mean that you all believe you have good reasons for the things that you believe. Right? I've never met anyone who that's not true for. I've never met anyone who's been like, hey, Paul, guess what? I have really strong opinions about abortion, but I'm stupid and I have no reason to believe any of it whatsoever, so just ignore me. Never heard that. Right? Where I've given people opportunities in classes to be like, yeah, I'm dumb. Don't listen to anything that I say. No one's ever taken it. No one's ever taken that opportunity, right? You all have a lot of beliefs. Some of them are beliefs about things that don't matter, right? But you also have a lot of beliefs about things that do matter, right? Things that you hold to be true, things that you hold to be really deeply importantly true, right? And you all think you're right. And that's a good thing, actually. That's a good thing. You should all believe that because that's the standard you should hold yourself to. You should hold yourself to the standard of, yeah, the things that I believe, I should have good reasons to believe them. Right. And I think this is true about everyone. Even so, some people have asked me before, and some of these say, well, what about like some religious traditions? Don't they say that that people should have faith rather than reasons for things? Maybe, but I teach medieval philosophy and philosophy of religion here at CSU, and so let me tell you, people within those traditions believe that they have really good reasons to believe that faith is the right way to attain, say, human happiness. There's an Islamic theologian from the 10th century named Al-Ghazali. And he's just like, yeah, you should have faith that Islam is true. And if you don't, you're stupid. Right? He thinks he has good reasons to believe that faith is the right route. Right? And I think that's true for that. That's the Islamic. I think that's true for any of the other sort of Hebraic traditions as well. Right? All of us believe that we're doing the smart thing, living the way that we live. Okay. So if you all buy what I'm saying up to this point, you're with me so far. What's the problem? Well, okay, let's do some concrete examples of things. Again, don't answer, but maybe implicitly raise your hand or whatever. All right. Do any of you have really strong beliefs about abortion? Don't tell me what they are, but do any of you have really strong beliefs about abortion? Okay. Do any of you have really strong beliefs about Black Lives Matter? Okay. Do any of you have really strong beliefs? Let's go with something less important, perhaps, about the new Star Wars movies. I say that one jokingly, but yeah, the most vicious arguments I've ever heard might have been about Star Wars stuff, right? Okay, what do you imagine the odds are that all of us share the same beliefs about any of the 3 topics that I just listed? Pretty low, right? And there's 30 of us. There's 28 people in this room right now. What are the odds are incredibly small that we all have the same beliefs about those important topics. Right? And yet we all probably feel quite passionately, confidently about at least some of those things. Right? And again, maybe those 3 things I listed, maybe those aren't your things. But again, look into yourself. There's something you feel really passionately about. There's something that you feel confidently about. That is also really controversial. What does this prove? What does this tell us? Well, it tells us that our confidence or our passionate feelings about something don't seem to be worth very much. They don't seem to prove much of anything, right? Because let's use the abortion example, right? If you feel something really strongly about abortion, you're convinced you're right. I can find someone who is equally convinced about the opposite thing. And with that one, it won't even be hard. It won't even be hard to find the person who's equally convinced of the opposite. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that you're wrong, right? It's possible that you are indeed correct. But the sheer fact that you're confident in what you believe, that in and of itself isn't really evidence that you're right. Because again, I can find people who are really confident in the opposite too. And that is the problem that requires logic and critical thinking as the tool to help us resolve it. Right? It's actually quite hard to figure out why we believe a lot of the things that we believe. Well, we'll talk about this a lot more on Thursday. This is what the class session on Thursday is really going to be all about. But if I actually asked you, why do you believe these things that are most important to you? The answers you're going to give, the more you think about it, the answers are going to get weirder and weirder. I remember when I was in high school, right? And I was in the high school debate team, which probably doesn't stun any of you, I would imagine. But you probably could have guessed. And there was this, I was a freshman, right? And there was this senior who was the head of the club. And I thought he was the coolest guy in the whole world. Right? And he had high school debate, right? So he probably wasn't. But to me, he seemed like he was the coolest guy, right? He seemed like he had it all figured out. So guess what freshman Paul's political beliefs were? Exactly the same as that guy's. Right? Is that a good reason to believe any of those things? Probably not. At least without a lot more evidence anyway. No, probably not. That probably isn't a really great reason for me to have formed those beliefs. And looking back on them, I still believe some of them. I don't believe others. But my reasoning for believing in them when I was a freshman in high school wasn't very good. Right? They just weren't sound reasons. What logic and critical thinking is going to be all about, what the tools we're going to develop are going to help us do, is figure out what would count as a good reason to believe that something is true. And then let's take another step back. You all are in a way worse position in some regards than I was as a freshman, right? Because when I was a freshman, there were like 10 TV stations. There was the internet, but it wasn't much. Like, there was not much on it. You had to go out of your way to find things. There were no social media networks. I remember the Facebook coming out when I was in college, right? There was no Twitter. There was no Reddit, right? And so there are relatively small sources of information that I have available to me about what was going on in the world, right? There were some newspapers, there were some magazines, a few websites, and like 2 news channels, right? And that was it. How many sources of information do you all have to sort through now, right? You got Facebook, and spoiler alert for advance warning for the class, don't go to Facebook. Facebook is the absolute worst source of information. But there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Reddit, there's a million different other sites you can find if you want to find something, right? You can find the site for anything you want, any weird belief you have, any weird belief you've ever heard of. There is some group on the internet pushing information about it. A million websites, right? Virulently partisan news sources who are indeed selling something more explicitly than they were. I mean, the news sources are always selling stuff, right? But they're doing it more explicitly now. They're not pretending or trying to avoid their biases in many cases, right? So you all have quite a task in front of you. What are you going to do with this avalanche of information, right? How are you going to figure out what information to trust? Because again, the information is going to be saying 50 different things. Right? You can find a website and you can find YouTube videos that will argue vehemently that the earth is really flat. I wouldn't advise spending a lot of time with them, but you can find them, right? They're information out there in the world. So how are you going to sort between all of it? How are you going to figure out what information is reliable and what information is not? And just as, again, we'll talk about this as the semester goes along, but sort of a spoiler warning, right? A spoiler alert, right? Like, human psychology actually makes it really challenging for us to do that. We're actually not, our natural tendencies of how we sort this information isn't great. They're not awful. We have some good tools available to us psychologically speaking, but also we've got some bad tendencies psychologically speaking too. For example, we tend to believe the first thing that we hear wherever it came from and then forget where it came from, which is problematic because, so let's just go again, high school, right? You hear a rumor in high school, you don't remember where you heard it from, you just believe it, and then it's really hard to push you off of it, right? Because you don't remember where you heard it from in the first place. You don't remember why you started believing it. And so it will be really difficult for new evidence to get you off the false rumor. So another thing we're going to work on this semester is developing resources that you can use to figure out what to do with various kinds of information, to figure out what counts as good evidence for beliefs, right? What information is reliable, what information isn't reliable, and what information is sort of in between may be helpful, but we need to be suspicious of it. How can we distinguish those things too? So that's the resource set we're going to try to develop throughout the semester. We're going to try to give you tools that you can use. I'm not going to answer questions for you as a general rule. There actually will be one political debate that we can resolve because it actually reduces to a purely logical error. There'll be one day this week, but mostly I'm not going to try to answer questions for you, right? I'm going to try to give you tools you can use to think more clearly about the questions that interest you and that are important to you in the course of your life. One last note for logic and critical thinking. In case there's any Star Trek fans in the room, perhaps, or people who are similar kinds of concerns. People often talk as if there's some kind of conflict between logic and emotions, and this is completely false. And again, this is a point I'm going to come to again and again throughout the semester. Indeed, actually, emotional commitments to things, feeling passionate about something, being invested in something, can be a powerful ally in the course of investigating some topic. You've all probably had the experience of trying to talk about something with someone who doesn't care about the topic at all. It sucks. Right? People like, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, whereas even if you disagree with someone, if you both care, you're going to have a way better conversation because of the caring. That's a kind of emotional commitment, emotional attachment to thing. That's a powerful ally for our logical investigations of the world. And people who argue the contrary are selling you something. They're trying to trick you in some way. But the fact that you do have an emotional commitment to something, that in and of itself is an evidence that you're right. So that's the only thing we need to do. We should not see emotions as our enemies, but we also can't let them count as evidence where they don't really work as evidence. So yay emotions, yay logic, have both of them work together to help us see the world better. That's the goal for the course. That's what we're going to try to be doing. All right. So this is probably a pretty good place, at least for me, to stop talking anyway. Again, I know it's hard sitting through this online stuff, so I'm going to try to keep these things moving as quickly as we can. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, comments about anything we've talked about so far? All right. Awesome. Then I'll let you go for the day. We'll do the same. I hope this, since you're here, the Zoom links I assume worked. I'll do the same thing. So if you go to Canvas for the 121 class session, so the Thursday class session, you click on the link within the modules. It should contain what we're going to talk about that day. Any readings that are due, and there will be a reading that I'd like you to do. It's very short, it's like 2 pages. I'd like you to do that reading before you come to class, and then there'll also be links to any videos that you should watch. There won't be any for Thursday, and also the Zoom link for the class session. So we'll use that. I won't email the links out anymore. I just wanted to do that today in case there are any sort of late adds to the course. But otherwise, I'll plan on seeing all of you on Thursday. I'm trying really hard to have everything be right there on Canvas, so you should always be able to find everything you need to know on Canvas, but don't hesitate to email me, ask me any questions if you have any, and I'll see you all on Thursday. All right, thank you all very much. Looking forward to the semester. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.